My name is Jessica Turner, and until 5 months ago, I believed in family above everything else. I believed that blood meant something sacred, that the people who raised you would always have your back, and that sacrifice for family was the highest virtue. I was wrong about all of it. I'm 27 years old, and I work as a pharmacovigilance researcher at Argento Pharma Labs in Burlington, Vermont. It's not the most glamorous job in the world, but it pays well, it's stable, and most importantly, it allowed me to save every penny I could for the future I'd been planning since I was 18 years old. A future that my father destroyed with a single slap across my face at my own engagement party. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why I'm sitting here in my new apartment, estranged from the family I once would have died for, you need to understand where I came from. I grew up in a modest 2-story house in suburban Vermont, the kind with peeling paint and a mortgage that never seemed to get smaller no matter how many years passed. My father, Gregory Turner, sold insurance for a living, though living might be too generous a term for what we managed on his income. My mother, Linda, worked part-time as a bookkeeper for a local dental practice, bringing in just enough to keep us afloat when Dad's commissions ran dry. And then there was my older brother, Brandon. 3 years my senior and somehow decades behind me in every measure of responsibility and common sense. Where I saved my allowance in a ceramic piggy bank, Brandon spent his before he even got home. Where I studied for scholarships, Brandon coasted through school on charm and Mom's endless excuses. Where I worked 3 jobs every summer starting at 16, Brandon pursued one failed business venture after another, each one funded by our parents' dwindling savings and mounting credit card debt. The soundtrack of my childhood wasn't lullabies or bedtime stories. It was the muffled arguments that drifted through the thin walls of our house every night after Brandon and I were supposed to be asleep. Mom's voice, high and strained. "We can't afford this. Greg, the credit cards are maxed out." Dad's response, always the same combination of defensiveness and delusion. "It's an investment, Linda. Brandon's got a good head for business. This one's going to work." It never worked. Not the lawn care service that ended when Brandon forgot to show up for paying customers. Not the DJ equipment that gathered dust in our garage after 2 gigs. Not the food truck that never made it past the planning stage despite the $10,000 startup loan from Dad's retirement fund. I learned early that in the Turner household, there were 2 sets of rules, one for Brandon and one for me. When Brandon wrecked his 3rd car at 19, Dad co-signed for another loan. When I needed a graphing calculator for AP Calculus, I was told to get a job if I wanted extras. When Brandon dropped out of community college after 1 semester, Mom said he was finding himself. When I mentioned wanting to study pharmacy, I was reminded that student loans were my responsibility. So I made them my responsibility. I studied until my eyes burned, worked until my feet ached, and saved until saving became second nature. Every dollar that didn't go toward absolute necessities went into my college fund. I wore the same 3 pairs of jeans through all of high school. I packed peanut butter sandwiches while my classmates bought lunch. I walked to work at the grocery store even in January's bitter cold because gas money was money that could go toward tuition. The day I graduated from the University of Vermont with a degree in pharmaceutical sciences and 0 debt was the proudest day of my life. I'd done it entirely on my own scholarships, work study, summer jobs, and a determination forged in all those nights listening to my parents argue about money. I stood there in my cap and gown, watching other families celebrate together, and felt a strange mixture of pride and loneliness. My parents had come to the ceremony, but they'd left early. Brandon had called that morning, needing bail money for a drunk and disorderly charge, and family came first, always. I started at Argento Pharma Labs 2 weeks after graduation. The starting salary felt like a fortune compared to the strict budget I'd lived on for 4 years. $52,000 a year. I could have afforded a nice apartment, a reliable car, maybe even a vacation. Instead, I found the cheapest room share available, kept driving my beaten Honda Civic, and continued living like a college student because I had a plan every month. After paying my minimal expenses, I put away $1,500, sometimes more if I picked up extra hours or got a performance bonus. I automated the transfers so I wouldn't be tempted to spend it. I named the savings account Future Freedom and watched the balance grow with a satisfaction that bordered on obsession. My coworkers thought I was crazy. They'd invite me out for drinks, for weekend trips, for concerts, and I'd always decline. "I'm saving for something," I'd say, and eventually they stopped asking. I didn't mind. I'd learned long ago that the only person I could truly depend on was myself. Everything changed the day Ethan Miller joined our department. He was a software engineer specializing in medical device integration, hired to help streamline our adverse event reporting systems. Tall and lanky with kind brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He had a quiet confidence that set him apart from the other tech guys who'd swagger through our department acting like they were doing us a favor by explaining basic code. Our first real conversation happened over a malfunctioning coffee machine in the break room. I was standing there, exhausted after a late night finishing a report, jabbing uselessly at the buttons. "Try hitting the espresso and hot water buttons at the same time," he suggested from behind me. "It's a weird glitch in the system." It worked. The machine gurgled to life and began dispensing something that vaguely resembled coffee. "Thanks," I said, turning to face him properly for the first time. "I'm Jessica, from Pharmacovigilance." "Ethan," he replied, extending his hand. "Just started in IT. Nice to meet the person behind all those detailed error reports. They actually make my job easier. Unlike some departments who just write 'it's broken' and expect miracles." I laughed, genuinely surprised. "Well, I figure the more information you have, the faster you can fix things. It's just logical." "Logical," he repeated with a smile. "I like logical." That coffee machine conversation turned into regular lunch breaks together. Not dates, not at first. Just two people who discovered they had more in common than their jobs. We both brought packed lunches, him to pay off student loans faster, me for my savings goals. We both preferred hiking to bars, libraries to clubs, quiet conversation to loud parties. 3 months after we met, he asked me on a real date. "There's this new Thai place that just opened downtown," he said, fidgeting with his pen. "I know you usually bring lunch, but I thought maybe we could try it." My treat. I almost said no out of habit. Eating out wasn't in my budget. But something in his hopeful expression made me reconsider. "Only if we can split the check," I countered. His smile was worth the $20 I'd have to subtract from that month's savings. One date became two. Became a standing Saturday morning hike. Became the kind of relationship I'd never allowed myself to imagine. Ethan understood my financial goals without judgment. He'd grown up in a middle-class family that lived within their means, and he respected my determination to build something better. He never pressured me to spend money I didn't want to spend. Never made me feel cheap or difficult for suggesting free activities. 6 months into our relationship, I finally told him about my family. We were sitting on a boulder overlooking Lake Champlain, sharing trail mix and watching the sunset paint the water gold. "My brother called again today," I said, breaking a comfortable silence. "Left 3 voicemails during my shift." Ethan waited, knowing I'd continue when I was ready. It was one of the things I loved about him. He never pushed, just created space for me to fill if I chose to. He needs money. He always needs money. This time it's for some cryptocurrency investment scheme he heard about on a podcast. I laughed, but it came out bitter. Last month, it was a food delivery app that was going to revolutionize rural Vermont. Before that, designer sneakers he was going to resell for triple the price. "Do your parents help him?" "Always. They refinanced the house last year to pay off his debts. Mom's working full-time now, at 61, because Dad's commission checks aren't enough anymore. And they keep enabling him, keep believing that this time will be different." Ethan reached for my hand, interlacing our fingers. "That must be hard to watch." "It's infuriating," I admitted. "They've never once asked if I need help. Not once." But Brandon snaps his fingers and they empty their accounts. And the worst part? They expect me to understand, to be supportive, to be the good daughter who doesn't cause problems. Is that why you're so careful with money? I turned to look at him, surprised by his insight. I made a promise to myself when I was 18. I was lying in bed, listening to them fight about the electric bill being past due. And I swore I would never be in that position, never owe anyone anything, never be one crisis away from disaster. And the savings account. I hesitated. I'd never told anyone about my future freedom fund. It's for my wedding, I said quietly. I know that sounds old-fashioned or whatever, but I've been saving for it since I started working. I want to pay for it myself. Have the day I want without begging for handouts or going into debt or dealing with family drama about money. Ethan squeezed my hand. That's not old-fashioned, that's smart. And very you. You don't think it's weird saving for a wedding when I wasn't even dating anyone? I think it's hopeful, he said simply. You were saving for a future you believed in, even when you couldn't see it clearly. That takes faith. That night, I showed him the account balance $28,000 after 6 years of relentless saving. He whistled low. That's impressive, Jess. Really impressive. It's not about having some huge fancy wedding, I explained quickly. It's about having choices, control, not starting a marriage in debt or obligation. I get it, he said. And I believed him. We'd been dating for 2 years when Ethan proposed. It wasn't a surprise. We talked about marriage, about the future, about combining our lives in all the practical ways that mattered. What surprised me was the location, the same boulder overlooking Lake Champlain, where I'd first told him about my family. I know you've been saving for this day a lot longer than you've known me, he said after I'd said yes through happy tears. And I want to contribute. I've got $15,000 set aside. Combined with your savings, we can have exactly the wedding we want. No debt, no obligations, no drama. By then, my future freedom fund had grown to $35,000. Together, we had $50,000. Enough for a beautiful wedding and a solid start to our married life. We set the date for October, a year away, and began planning. Nothing extravagant, but everything quality. A ceremony at the Lavender Grove Pavilion with its stunning mountain views. A reception for 70 guests with excellent food and an open bar. A photographer whose work we'd admired for years. Real flowers, not silk. A band, not a DJ. The dress I'd fallen in love with at first sight, not the cheaper alternative. Every vendor was booked. Every deposit paid from our joint wedding account. We were 6 months from the wedding when Brandon's latest crisis hit. The call came on a Tuesday evening. Ethan and I were cooking dinner together, dancing around each other in my tiny kitchen with practiced ease. My phone buzzed on the counter. Mom. Hi. Mom, I answered, putting her on speaker so I could keep stirring the pasta sauce. Jessica, honey, I'm so glad you answered. Her voice had that particular strain that meant Brandon was in trouble. Again. We have a situation. What kind of situation? I asked, though I already knew. Your brother's business venture. There have been some complications. Ethan and I exchanged glances. Brandon's latest business venture was an energy drink startup called Vital Boost. He'd been hyping it for months, claiming he had investors lined up and distribution deals in the works. What kind of complications? I repeated. Well, some of the investors are asking for their money back. Apparently, there was a misunderstanding about the timeline for returns. A misunderstanding, I said flatly. Mom, did Brandon promise them returns he couldn't deliver? Don't take that tone. Jessica, your brother is trying to build something. Sometimes business is complicated. How much does he owe? The pause told me everything. $70,000, she whispered. I nearly dropped the spoon. $70,000, Mom. How did he even get that much money from people? He's very persuasive, you know that. He believed in the product, and he made others believe too. But now they're threatening legal action, and you know what that could mean. Criminal charges. Jessica? Your brother could go to prison. I felt Ethan's hand on my back, steady and supportive. Mom, I don't have that kind of money. You know that. Well, no, of course not that much. but your father and I have scraped together $20,000 from our retirement and a home equity loan. Brandon's girlfriend's family is contributing $10,000. We just need to find the rest. I can't help, I said firmly. I'm sorry, but I can't. Jessica, this is your brother we're talking about. Family helps family. Where was that philosophy when I was working 3 jobs to pay for college? That was different. You were always so capable, so independent. Brandon needs more support. Brandon needs to face consequences. Mom, he's 30 years old. So you're just going to let him go to prison? Is that what you're saying? I'm saying I don't have $40,000 to give him. Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice was careful, calculated. What about your wedding fund? The air left my lungs. Behind me. Ethan's hand stilled. What about it? I managed. Well, weddings are so expensive these days. Surely you could scale back a little. Have something simpler that money could save your brother's future. Jessica, you can always have a nice anniversary party later when things are more stable. No, you haven't even thought about it. I don't need to think about it. The answer is no. Jessica Marie Turner, I cannot believe you would be so selfish. After everything this family has done for you. What exactly has this family done for me? Mom, please, enlighten me. We raised you, fed you, kept a roof over your head. The bare minimum legal requirement for parents. Congratulations. How dare you? I hung up. Ethan pulled me into his arms as I stood there shaking with rage. You okay? They want our wedding money, I said into his chest. $50,000 that we saved, that we earned, that we carefully planned with. They want me to hand it over to save Brandon from the consequences of his own fraud. That's not happening, Ethan said firmly. That money is ours. For our future. They're going to make my life hell now. You know that, right? The guilt trips, the manipulation, the whole family turning against me. Then we'll face it together. You're not alone in this anymore, Jess. You haven't been for a while now. He was right, but old habits die hard. I'd spent so many years being the only one I could count on that learning to lean on someone else still felt foreign. Wonderful. But foreign. The calls started immediately. Dad, trying the stern approach. Your mother is very upset. You need to apologize and reconsider. Brandon, playing the victim. I guess I know where I stand with you now. Thanks for nothing, sis. Aunts and uncles who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly had opinions about family loyalty. I blocked them all. For 2 weeks, there was blessed silence. Ethan and I continued our wedding planning, sent out invitations, had our tasting at the venue. I almost believed the storm had passed. Then Brandon posted on Facebook. Some people forget where they came from. Some people think they're too good for the family that raised them. Just remember, Jess, karma has a way of coming back around. Hope your precious wedding is worth destroying your family. The comments were a cesspool of family members and Brandon's friends vilifying me. Cold-hearted, selfish, forgotten her roots. People who didn't know the first thing about our family dynamics felt qualified to judge me based on Brandon's sob story. I deactivated my account. We could elope, Ethan suggested one evening as I stressed over the seating chart, trying to figure out how to arrange tables when half my family was no longer speaking to me. Vegas, the courthouse, just us. No, I said firmly. That's what they want. For me to give up, to prove that I'm the problem. We're having our wedding, the one we planned, the one we paid for, the one we deserve. He kissed my forehead. I love your stubborn streak. It's not stubbornness, it's principle. The engagement party was Ethan's idea. Something small, he said. Just close friends and the family members who are still acting like adults. A chance to celebrate without all the wedding stress. I agreed, partly because I wanted to show that I wasn't hiding, wasn't ashamed of my decision. We planned it for a Saturday evening in early April, renting out the back garden area of our favorite restaurant, 70 guests, Ethan's family, our friends from work, and the handful of relatives who hadn't taken sides in the Brandon drama. Against my better judgment, I invited my parents. Not Brandon, I had some limits, but I thought maybe Mom and Dad could behave themselves for one evening. Dad had called the week before, his voice conciliatory. "Water under the bridge," he'd said. "You're still my daughter. We should be there for your special moments." I should have known better. I should have remembered that in the Turner family, there's no such thing as water under the bridge. Only temporary ceasefires while new strategies are formed. The night of the party was perfect. One of those early spring evenings where the air is soft and warm, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. The restaurant had strung lights through the trees, creating a canopy of stars. The food was excellent, the champagne flowing, the atmosphere exactly what we'd hoped for. I wore a navy blue dress that Ethan had bought me for Christmas, paired with the pearl earrings his mother had given me. I felt beautiful, loved, supported. My coworkers were there, laughing at inside jokes. Ethan's sister had flown in from Seattle. Even my Aunt Catherine, my mother's sister who had privately told me she supported my decision, was there with her husband. My parents arrived an hour late, which should have been my first warning. They were dressed appropriately, but there was something in their bearing, a tension that made my stomach clench. Dad had been drinking. I could smell it when he hugged me stiffly. Mom's smile didn't reach her eyes. "The place looks lovely," she said, glancing around. "Must have cost a fortune." "It was reasonable," I replied, not taking the bait. They mingled awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable among people who didn't know or care about the family drama. I watched them from across the garden as I chatted with friends, seeing them check their phones repeatedly, exchange meaningful looks. Everything fell apart around 9 o'clock. I was standing with Ethan and his parents, laughing at a story about his childhood, when I felt a hand on my elbow. "Dad." "Jessica, I need to speak with you. Privately." "Dad." "We're in the middle of, now, Jessica." His tone made Ethan step closer to me, protective. "Is everything okay? Mr. Turner?" "Family business," Dad said curtly. "I need to speak to my daughter alone." I looked at Ethan, trying to convey with my eyes that I was okay, that I could handle this. "I'll be right back," I said, following Dad to a corner of the garden, near the fountain that provided some privacy from the other guests. "What's so urgent?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Your brother is in serious trouble," he began. "Dad, no. We are not doing this here. This is my engagement party. The investors are moving forward with criminal charges. The hearing is Monday. If he doesn't have the money by then, he's going to be arrested. Jessica, arrested. That's Brandon's problem. How can you be so cold? He's your brother. He's a 30-year-old man who committed fraud. Dad, I'm not responsible for that. We're family." His voice was rising, drawing glances from nearby guests. "Family takes care of each other." Yo guys, where was that energy when I was eating ramen for the third week in a row in college? Where was family takes care of each other when I needed textbooks? When I was walking to work in a blizzard because I couldn't afford to fix my car? You never asked for help. I shouldn't have had to ask. You were too busy throwing money at Brandon's failures to notice I was struggling. At least Brandon tries. At least he has ambition. You've always been selfish, Jessica. Always thought you were better than us with your college degree and your fancy job. Too good to help your own family. I'm selfish, I laughed, but it was harsh, bitter. I'm selfish for not handing over $50,000 that I saved for years, money that Ethan and I earned. Honestly, to bail out a con artist. Don't you dare call your brother that. What else should I call someone who takes money from investors for a product that doesn't exist? The product exists. He just needs more time. Dad, stop. Just stop. I'm not giving Brandon our wedding money. Not a single cent. And if you can't accept that, then you should leave. His face went red, then purple. I'd seen him angry before, but never like this. The veins in his neck bulged, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. You ungrateful little bitch, he snarled. After everything we've done for you, everything we've sacrificed. What sacrifices? Dad. Name one. We gave you life, We gave you everything. You gave me a childhood of listening to you and Mom scream about money. You gave me the knowledge that I would always come second to Brandon. You gave me the determination to never, ever end up like you. The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. His open palm connected with my cheek with a crack that seemed to echo across the suddenly silent garden. The force of it turned my head, made me stumble. The shock was worse than the pain. In 27 years, my father had never laid a hand on me. For a moment, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. Ethan was there in an instant, putting himself between me and my father. "Touch her again and I'll have you arrested," he said, his voice deadly calm. "She's my daughter," Dad roared. "I'll discipline her however I see fit." "I'm not your property," I shouted back, my hand pressed to my burning cheek. "I'm not your ATM and I'm done being your emotional punching bag." People were pulling out phones, recording. Mom appeared, grabbing Dad's arm. "Greg, stop it. People are watching." "Let them watch." He tried to lunge around Ethan, but Ethan's father and brother-in-law blocked him. "Let them see what an ungrateful bitch I raised. Too good to help her family. Too selfish to save her brother." "You need to leave," Ethan said. "Now, or I'm calling the police." "Call them," Dad shouted. "Tell them how she's letting her brother go to prison. Tell them what kind of person refuses to help family." "I'll tell them you assaulted me," I said quietly. And something in my tone must have penetrated his drunk rage because he stopped struggling against the men holding him back. "You wouldn't—" Mom gasped. "Jessica, you wouldn't call the police on your father." I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who had enabled Brandon my entire life, who had stood by while I worked myself to the bone, who had the audacity to act shocked that their golden child's actions had consequences. "Watch me," I said, pulling out my phone. "Wait," Mom cried. "We're leaving, Greg. We're leaving now." But I was already dialing. "Hi, I need to report an assault. Yes, I'm safe now. The Rosewood restaurant on Church Street. Yes, I'll wait here." The look of betrayal on my mother's face might have hurt once. Now I felt nothing but cold determination. They'd crossed a line, and I was done pretending it was okay. The police arrived within 10 minutes, and by then, several guests had sent me videos of the incident, multiple angles of my father hitting me, of his aggressive behavior, of his attempted second attack. The officer, a young woman with kind eyes, took my statement while another spoke to witnesses. "Do you want to press charges?" she asked gently. I looked across the garden to where my parents were being questioned. Mom was crying, playing the victim. Dad was all bluster and excuses. "Yes," I said, "I do." "He's your father," Aunt Catherine said softly from beside me. She'd stayed while other family members had fled. "Are you sure?" "He stopped being my father the moment he hit me," I replied. "Now he's just a man who assaulted me at my engagement party." The rest of the night was a blur. The police took Dad to the station. Mom left with him, shouting about lawyers and family betrayal. The remaining guests tried to salvage the evening, but the celebration was over. Ethan and I made the rounds, apologizing, thanking people for coming, pretending our hearts weren't breaking. "I'm so sorry," I whispered to Ethan's mother. This isn't." "Shh," she said, pulling me into a hug. "This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault." But it felt like my fault. I'd brought this chaos into Ethan's life, into his family's life. I'd turned what should have been a beautiful evening into a scene from a reality show. That night, in the safety of our apartment, I finally let myself cry. Not delicate tears, but body-shaking sobs that left me gasping for air. Ethan held me through it all, murmuring reassurances, reminding me that I'd done nothing wrong. "I'm pressing charges," I said when I could speak again. "I know he's my father, but I'm pressing charges." "Good," Ethan said firmly. "He assaulted you, in front of 70 witnesses. There have to be consequences. My family will never forgive me. Your family should be begging for your forgiveness. He hit you. Jess, your mother stood there and watched. Where's their accountability? He was right, but it didn't make it easier. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal procedures, meetings with prosecutors, and fielding calls from every family member with an opinion. Brandon left me a voicemail that I saved for evidence. "You're really going to send Dad to jail over money? You're sick, Jessica. You're a sick, vindictive bitch, and I hope you're happy destroying our family." The irony wasn't lost on me. I was vindictive for pressing charges against my attacker. But Brandon wasn't responsible for the fraud that started this whole mess. The prosecutor, a no-nonsense woman named Sarah Chen, was encouraging. "With the video evidence and multiple witnesses, this is a straightforward case. Your father will likely plead down to avoid trial. But he'll face consequences." "What kind of consequences?" "Probation, anger management classes, possibly some jail time, though that's less likely for a first offense. There will be a restraining order, of course." A restraining order against my own father. The words felt surreal. As the legal proceedings moved forward, other truths began to surface. Aunt Catherine called with disturbing news. "Jessica, I've been talking to some family members. Did you know your father has been borrowing money using your name?" "What?" "He's been telling people you promised to help with Brandon's debts, that you're good for it because of your job. Martha gave him $5,000 last month because he said you'd guaranteed it." My blood ran cold. I never. "Aunt Catherine, I never promised anything like that." "I know, honey. But there are others. Your cousin David, Uncle Robert. They all thought they were lending money that you'd backed." The full scope of my father's deception began to unfold. He'd been using my name, my reputation as the responsible one, to fund Brandon's disasters. When I refused to hand over the wedding money, his house of cards started collapsing. I hired a lawyer. A bulldog named Marcus Webb who specialized in financial fraud. What he uncovered was worse than I'd imagined. My father had taken out credit cards in my name, had listed me as a guarantor on loans I'd never seen. My sterling credit score, built through years of careful management, was in jeopardy. "We can fight this," Marcus assured me. "File fraud reports, dispute the accounts, but it's going to be a process." "How much?" I asked, bracing myself. "From what I can find so far, about $30,000 in various debts connected to your name or social security number." I wanted to throw up. While I'd been saving every penny, denying myself basic pleasures to build my future, my father had been stealing that future out from under me. The wedding planning ground to a halt. How could I think about flower arrangements when I was filing police reports? How could I taste cake when my stomach was in constant knots? Ethan suggested we postpone, but I refused. "They've taken enough," I said. "They don't get to take this too." The criminal case moved forward. Dad, faced with video evidence and a determined prosecutor, pleaded guilty to misdemeanor assault. He got probation, 50 hours of community service, mandatory anger management, and a restraining order keeping him 500 feet away from me. The judge, a stern older man, gave him a lecture about family violence that had Dad looking at his shoes like a scolded child. Mom didn't come to the hearing. Neither did Brandon. But Aunt Catherine was there, and Ethan's family, and my friends from work. I was building a new family, I realized. One based on choice rather than blood, on respect rather than obligation. The financial fraud case was more complex. We managed to prove that I hadn't authorized the debts, but recovering the money was another matter. Dad had no assets left. Everything had gone to Brandon's failed ventures. "I could sue," Marcus explained, "but you can't get blood from a stone." "So I just eat the losses?" I asked. "We'll get the fraudulent accounts removed from your credit report. Your score will recover. As for the money..." He shrugged apologetically. In the end, I spent $10,000 on legal fees to clean up the mess my father had made. $10,000 that could have gone toward our honeymoon, our future home, our life together. But it was worth it to be free. The family fracture was complete. Mom sent one last email, a masterpiece of manipulation and guilt. "I hope you're satisfied," she wrote. "Your father is humiliated. Your brother is facing criminal charges. and our family is destroyed. All because you couldn't share your precious money. I'll never forgive you for this." I didn't reply. There was nothing to say. Brandon's investors did press charges. Without the bailout money, he had no choice but to face the music. He got 18 months in minimum security for fraud, though he'd probably serve less with good behavior. Part of me felt sad for him, but a larger part felt relief. Maybe consequences would teach him what our parents never had. The wedding happened on a perfect October day. 50 guests instead of 70. Amazing how family drama clarifies who really matters. Ethan's family had embraced me completely, his mother even offering to walk me down the aisle. I declined gently, choosing to walk alone. I'd gotten myself this far, I could make it the rest of the way. My dress was everything I'd dreamed of, paid for with money I'd saved since I was 21. The flowers were real, the food exquisite, the band fantastic. During our first dance, Ethan whispered, "No regrets." "None," I said, meaning it. Not a single one. The restraining order meant my father couldn't crash the wedding, though I'd hired security just in case. Mom didn't try to come. Brandon was in prison. It was peaceful, joyful, everything a wedding should be. Aunt Catherine gave a speech during the reception that made me cry. "Jessica has shown us all what real strength looks like," she said. "Not the strength to endure toxicity, but the strength to say, no more. Not the strength to carry everyone else's burdens, but the strength to set them down and walk away." I'm proud to call her family. The real kind of family. The kind you choose. We used the money we'd saved on the honeymoon we'd always dreamed of. 2 weeks in New Zealand, hiking and exploring and being blissfully unreachable. I'd left my phone in airplane mode the entire time, returning to find dozens of messages I deleted without reading. That chapter of my life was closed. 6 months later, Ethan and I bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood 45 minutes from my hometown. Far enough that accidental encounters were unlikely. Close enough that I could maintain relationships with the family members who'd supported me. I still work at Argento Pharmalabs, promoted twice since the wedding. Ethan started his own consulting firm, specializing in medical software integration. We're building the life we planned, the life we saved for, the life we deserve. Sometimes I think about my parents, about Brandon. Mom still lives in that same house with the peeling paint, working full-time at 62. Dad sells insurance and drinks too much, banned from seeing the daughter he raised. Brandon got out of prison last month, according to Aunt Catherine, already talking about his next big idea. The cycle continues, just without me. People ask if I regret pressing charges, if I regret choosing money over family. They don't understand. It was never about money. It was about respect, boundaries, and refusing to be an ATM for people who saw my success as their safety net. It was about breaking a cycle of enabling and exploitation that would have continued forever if I hadn't said no. The $50,000 we saved for our wedding gave us exactly what I'd dreamed of. A beautiful day and a solid foundation for our marriage. No debt, no obligations, no resentment. We started our life together freely, beholden to no one but each other. Last week, I started a new savings account. I labeled it Future Family, because Ethan and I are talking about kids. When we have them, they'll grow up in a house where money is discussed honestly, where both children are valued equally, where love isn't conditional on compliance. They'll never lie awake listening to their parents fight about bills. They'll never wonder why their sibling gets chance after chance while they get lectures about responsibility. They'll never have to choose between their savings and their family, because in our house, family won't mean sacrifice without reciprocation. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I could have handled things differently. If there was a path that didn't end with a restraining order against my father and complete estrangement from my mother. But then I remember the sound of that slap. The shock of realizing that their love came with a price tag I could never afford to pay. Ethan tells me I'm the strongest person he knows. But I don't feel strong. I feel free. Free from the weight of being the responsible one in an irresponsible family. Free from the guilt of success in the face of their failures. Free from the expectation that I'll always be there to clean up messes I didn't make. My phone rings sometimes, Unknown numbers I don't answer. Voicemails I delete unheard. The flying monkeys still try occasionally. Relatives who think they can broker peace if I'll just apologize. Just help out one more time. Just be the bigger person. I've learned that being the bigger person usually means being the smaller fool. The money's gone now, spent on the wedding, the honeymoon, the house, the life we're building. Even if I wanted to help Brandon with his latest scheme, I don't. I couldn't. We're house poor and happy. Fixing up our little colonial one room at a time. Planning for babies and college funds and retirement. The future I saved for, just different than I imagined. There's a strange peace in burning bridges when the bridge was only ever carrying traffic in one direction. My family wanted me to set myself on fire to keep them warm. And when I refused, they called me cold. But I'm not cold. I'm just done heating homes I don't live in anymore. Sometimes I run into people from my hometown, and they look at me with pity or judgment, depending on which version of the story they heard. How could you let your brother go to prison, they ask, as if I force-fed him delusions of grandeur and taught him to lie to investors. Your poor parents, they sigh, as if I was the one who refinanced their home for a child who couldn't tell the truth if his life depended on it. I don't defend myself anymore. The people who matter know the truth. The rest can think what they want. Their opinion of me is none of my business, as my therapist likes to say. Yes, I see a therapist now. Turns out that growing up in a dysfunctional family leaves marks that take time to heal. Every other Wednesday, I sit in Dr. Martinez's office and unpack another box of childhood trauma, examining each piece before deciding whether to keep it or throw it away. You were parentified, she explained during one session. Made responsible for managing your parents' emotions, their finances, their failures. No child should carry that weight. But I'm not a child anymore, I pointed out. No, but the patterns remain. The guilt you feel for having boundaries. That's the child in you who was taught that love means giving until there's nothing left. She's right, of course. Even now, successfully married and building my own life, I sometimes wake up in a cold sweat, wondering if I should have just given them the money. Then Ethan pulls me close, reminds me that our life together is worth more than enabling Brandon's next failure. They made their choice, he always says. You just made yours too. The holidays are the hardest. Thanksgiving at Ethan's parents' house is warm and welcoming, but there's always an empty space where my family should be. His mother sets the table beautifully, cooks enough food for an army, tells stories that make everyone laugh. But when she hugs me goodbye and whispers, "You're always welcome here, sweetheart," I have to blink back tears. Christmas is easier. We started our own traditions, a real tree even though we're both allergic, homemade cookies that never quite look like the pictures, presents wrapped in newspaper because we forgot to buy wrapping paper again. It's imperfect and ours and free from the weight of expectation. Brandon reached out once, through a cousin. He's clean now, apparently. Working a steady job, living with a new girlfriend who keeps him grounded. He wanted to apologize, to make amends, to rebuild our relationship. I thought about it for exactly 30 seconds before declining. But he's changed, my cousin insisted. People can change, Jessica. I hope that's true, I said. For his sake, I really do. But I changed too. I changed into someone who doesn't give third chances to people who burned the first 20. The cousin called me unforgiving. Maybe I am. Or maybe forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. I can forgive Brandon for being who our parents raised him to be while still protecting myself from the consequences of his choices. I can forgive my parents for their failures while maintaining the boundaries that keep me safe. That's the thing about setting boundaries. Everyone who benefits from you having none will call you selfish for having any. But selfish isn't always an insult. Sometimes it's a survival mechanism. Sometimes it's the only way to build something worth protecting. Ethan's pregnant now. We found out last month, 2 pink lines on a Tuesday morning that changed everything. We're having a baby, a daughter according to the ultrasound. She'll grow up in our little house with its creaky floors and perfect garden. She'll know she's loved without conditions, valued without comparison, supported without manipulation. We're converting the spare bedroom into a nursery, painting it soft yellow because Ethan read that it's soothing for babies. I sit in there sometimes, in the rocking chair we bought secondhand and refinished together, and think about the mother I want to be. Not like my mother, who loved conditionally and enabled destructively. Not like my father, whose affection came with a price tag. But something new. Something better. The baby will have grandparents. Ethan's parents are already buying too many toys and planning babysitting schedules. She'll have Aunt Catherine, who drove 3 hours to celebrate when we told her the news. She'll have the family we've built through choice and effort and mutual respect. What she won't have is the dysfunction I grew up with. She won't know the weight of being responsible for adults who should be responsible for her. She won't lie awake listening to arguments about money or wonder why mommy saves every penny while daddy spends recklessly. She'll grow up secure in the knowledge that her parents are a team, that money is a tool, not a weapon, that love doesn't require sacrifice of self. Sometimes I wonder if she'll ask about my side of the family when she's older. Why she only has one set of grandparents. Why there are no pictures of mommy's childhood home on the walls. I'll tell her the truth in age-appropriate pieces. That sometimes families break, and that's okay. That love should lift you up, not drag you down. That walking away from toxicity isn't giving up, it's growing up. The restraining order expires next month. My lawyer asked if I want to renew it, and I honestly don't know. Dad hasn't tried to contact me, hasn't violated the terms. Mom sends a Christmas card every year with no return address, just signed, your mother, like that's supposed to mean something. Brandon is apparently still with the girlfriend, still working, still dreaming of his next big break. Maybe they've all moved on too. Maybe the silence is its own kind of peace. But then I remember the crack of his palm against my cheek, the shock in the eyes of 70 guests, the entitlement in his voice when he demanded my wedding money. The restraining order isn't about punishment anymore, it's about protection. Not just physical protection, but emotional. A legal document that says this far and no further. A boundary made official. Filed with the county. Enforceable by law. I'll probably renew it, not out of spite or anger, but out of wisdom. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some distances are necessary for survival. Some families are better loved from afar. Or not at all. Our daughter kicks now, strong and insistent, especially when I'm trying to sleep. Ethan talks to her through my belly, tells her about the house we're preparing, the dog we're thinking of getting, the adventures we'll have as a family. He promises her ice cream for breakfast on her birthdays and help with homework and driving lessons when she's 16. Normal promises, the kind parents should make and keep. I make her promises too. Silent ones in the dark. I promise to see her for who she is, not who I need her to be. I promise to love her equally if she's joined by siblings, to never make her feel responsible for their successes or failures. I promise to teach her that no is a complete sentence, that boundaries are healthy, that she doesn't owe anyone access to her life or her resources just because they share DNA. Most of all, I promise to break the cycle, the generational trauma, the financial dysfunction, the emotional manipulation disguised as family loyalty. It all stops here. She'll grow up in a house where love is abundant and unconditional, where success is celebrated, not exploited, where family means support, not sabotage. The nursery is almost finished now. Soft yellow walls, white furniture. A mobile of elephants that plays somewhere over the rainbow. The rocking chair where I sit and think. Where I'll feed her soon. Where I'll read stories and sing lullabies and build new traditions unmarred by the past. There's a photo on the dresser, Ethan and me on our wedding day, laughing as confetti falls around us. We look young and hopeful and free. That's what $50,000 bought us, not just a party, but proof that we could plan and save and achieve our goals without drama or debt. It bought us the knowledge that we're partners in every sense, that we can weather storms together, that our family is built on bedrock, not quicksand. When our daughter is old enough to understand, I'll tell her about that day. Not about the family who wasn't there, but about the family who was. About Aunt Catherine's speech and Ethan's mother's tears, and the friends who cheered when we were pronounced husband and wife. I'll tell her that family's about showing up, not showing off, about building up, not tearing down. Maybe someday she'll meet her other grandparents, her uncle, the relatives who chose sides in a war I never wanted to fight. Maybe by then, time will have softened edges and healed wounds. Maybe Brandon will be stable. My parents will have found peace, and we can have some kind of limited relationship that honors the past without repeating it. Or maybe not. Maybe the silence will stretch on, broken only by Christmas cards with no return address and messages passed through cousins. Maybe our daughter will grow up knowing only the family we've chosen. And that will be enough. More than enough, it will be everything. The sun is setting now, painting the nursery walls gold through the window. Ethan will be home soon, and we'll have dinner and talk about our days and feel the baby kick and plan for a future that we're building together, brick by brick, choice by choice. I think about Jessica Turner at 18, lying in bed listening to her parents fight about money, promising herself she'd never be in that position. She kept that promise, though not in the way she expected. She thought she was saving for a wedding, but she was really saving for a life where she could say no without guilt, where she could choose her family instead of being stuck with them, where love comes without price tags or conditions. That $50,000 is long gone now, transformed into memories and mortgage payments and maternity clothes. But what it bought us, this life, this family, this freedom, is priceless. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd make the same choice, every single time. Because sometimes the most expensive thing you can do is be cheap with your boundaries. Sometimes the highest price you pay is for the approval of people who don't value you. Sometimes you have to spend everything you've saved to purchase your freedom, and sometimes that's the best investment you'll ever make. My name is Jessica Turner Miller now, and I'm 28 years old. I'm a wife, a soon-to-be mother, a successful professional, and a woman who knows her worth. I'm the daughter who said no, the sister who walked away, the family member who refused to play by rules that were rigged against her from the start. And I regret nothing. Not the money I didn't give, not the relationships I couldn't save, not the bridges I burned to light my way forward. Because in the end, the only person who could save me was me. And I did. $50,000 at a time. One boundary at a time. One choice at a time. The baby kicks again, and I place my hand over the spot, feeling her movement beneath my palm. "Hey there, little one," I whisper. "Ready to meet your family. Your real family, the one we chose and built and fought for. I think you're going to love them. And they already love you. No conditions, no strings, no price tags. Just love. That's what freedom feels like. Not the absence of family, but the presence of the right one. Not the breaking of bonds, but the forging of better ones. Not the ending of a story, but the beginning of a better one. And this one is ours to write.